Welcome to the Rewind YouTube channel and our agency partner speaker series. My name is Farrah and I'm the partner marketing manager at Rewind. Today I'll be interviewing Adam Pearce. He's the CEO of Ecommerce, one of the UK's fastest growing Shopify expert agencies. Adam has been a speaker at a number of events hosted by Shopify in the UK and on behalf of Shopify at the Autumn Fair and DTI UK events for e-commerce merchants. He's also the host of the podcast Shopify Across the Pond. So thanks for joining us, Adam. To get started, could you tell us a little bit more about yourself? How did you get into e-commerce?
Yeah, hi Farrah. Thanks so much for having me on here. And yeah, I guess my kind of journey into e-commerce was probably a little bit bumpy and unusual. But on the same hand, I think a lot of people within the Shopify community, have kind of come in from different routes. So when I graduated from college, I then went on to a graduate scheme with Accenture as a management consultant. And I always kind of talk about this, I was imagining it was going to be a world of Armani suits and business class. But obviously it wasn't. It was actually about doing some pretty, hard work and long hours. And, if I'm honest with you, look, it was great initially. And I worked with some really, big financial services companies, when I was on that graduate scheme. But I kind of decided after a few years that I wanted to kind of do something a bit more meaning. And I actually retrained as a teacher. And again, I absolutely loved it for about 3 years. And you can kind of see there's a bit of a pattern coming in here. And I kind of decided, look, after that time, I wanted to do something that was really a mix of both being kind of within commerce and with industry, but also with education. And I actually went to be a business development manager for an app company that specializes in education apps. And really kind of in that time, I sort of learned my trade in sales, learned my trade in marketing, got very interested in email marketing, got very interested in Facebook ads. And I really, after that, I'd always in the back of my mind wanted to have my own business. And my now business partner and also brother-in-law, he was playing around with this thing called Shopify. And this was probably about 5 or 6 years ago. And I kind of said, well, yeah, whatever, it's going to be one of these things that comes and goes. And luckily for us, it didn't. And we kind of decided, look, with my background in marketing, we wanted to kind of at the time create something where a Shopify merchant could come. They could obviously have their development work done, as a lot of Shopify merchants wanted, but also be very much helped in terms of the marketing side of what they did. And that's really kind of where the idea of Blend came from, because we were kind of blending marketing and development together and putting it together in this way that Shopify merchants could access it in one go. And sort of fast forward to now, we're a team of 17. We have a large number of clients across the world, mainly in the US and Canada, but also quite a few in the UK as well. And we now do a lot of work around that on-demand digital department offering, which is something that keeps us very busy and gets us to work with some really fantastic brands that use Shopify, but also obviously use Rewind as well.
Right. So yeah, I've heard about your on-demand digital department approach. And I know that's a little different than your typical e-commerce agency. Could you tell me more about how you guys function as this on-demand digital department?
Yeah, sure. So really the idea came about because when we started as an agency, we were very much project focused. So a client would come in, we would build a store for them, and then they would go and they would run that store themselves. And after probably about 2 years, we said, look, this isn't kind of working as a model because a lot of clients want to stay with us. And equally as an agency, if you think about the simple economics of it, we wanted to have clients that we could work with over a long period of time. And we switched to a retainer model, which was really kind of the savior of the business, because I think if we hadn't, I don't think we would have still be going as a business now. But if you kind of think about the past 2 years with everything that's happened in the world, there's been a massive boom in e-commerce again. And I think there were some stats from Shopify that said that effectively in a 3-month period, we had 10 years worth of growth. And if you think about it like that, in that context, what people are going to need from an agency is going to have to change. And a lot of our clients were kind of thinking of lots of different things. They wanted project work. They wanted retainer work. They were also thinking about employing their own developers. So what we said is, look, can we actually put something together where people can access the team of people that they need on an on-demand basis? So sometimes they need more of us, sometimes they need less of us, but they feel like they're actually working directly with a team that they can tap into, like it would be if we were sat, across the table from the office. And that's really kind of where the idea of the on-demand digital department came from, because we now, rather than kind of very strictly defining, okay, look, it's a project to retain or it is, you work with us as your on-demand digital department. And some months, it might be that we're building a new piece of functionality. Some months we might be focusing more on your CRO. Some months we might be working with you on developing your returns from email marketing. So it just gives a lot more flexibility to Shopify merchants who are in growth phase, particularly when you are thinking about, look, I need new people, I need different things happening, things are changing so quickly. And that's really kind of how we came up with the idea of the on-demand digital department.
Right. Great. Yeah, I mean, sounds like a great approach. Yeah, thanks for kind of taking us through that a little bit more. You also mentioned the fantastic group of clients that you work with. I'd love to learn more about your clients. Like, what kinds of merchants do you find that you work with the most often?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, isn't it? Because, I'm sure there'll probably be a lot of agency owners listening, a lot of people that work with agencies. And I think, typically agencies can tend to kind of go down a particular niche or industry. So it might be apparel, it might be food. But what we did is we said, look, from our perspective, we think that working with a particular stage of client, and we call our clients pre-plus merchants. So what that means is for us is that people are in a high growth mode. They're not necessarily ready to go on Shopify Plus, or maybe they could be on Shopify Plus. But it's about that stage where they're kind of needing to kind of take themselves that little bit step forward. They're not small, they're not medium, they're not large. They're kind of in this grey area, and that's who we tend to work with. So people that fit into that really are from a range of different industries. We work with apparel companies, we work with food companies, we work with home furnishing companies, we work a lot with pet products. And a lot of that is because of the growth that's happened in e-commerce over the past couple of years. So we tend to, we don't have an industry or niche that we work in. I think the benefit of doing that for us is that ideas that we have constantly have to be fresh. It's not like that we can, work with just pet brands and just be kind of saying, look, let's do the same thing again and again, because ultimately, people don't want that. They want some fresh thinking, and that kind of keeps us on our toes. So yeah, very much for us, it's not an industry or niche. It's all about the growth and the focus of that particular business and that merchant, and those are the people that we choose to work with.
Great. So for a Shopify store owner that, is struggling to manage the rapid growth of their business, what advice would you provide to them?
Yeah, great question. I think when it comes to kind of looking at your growth, I think that the key thing that you've got to do is, first of all, work out, you as a merchant, what are the things that you can delegate to your team if you have a team? And if you don't, what are the things you can delegate to a freelancer or an agency? Because ultimately, when you are in that growth mode, you as the owner of that store or owner of that business need to have focus on the growth. What are you doing? What is the overall high level picture of what you're doing? So I think if you can think about your week, if you, for example, you're listening now, after you've finished watching this, go ahead and look at your calendar for the past week. Think about the things in there that actually could be done by somebody else, or what are the things that you don't need to do? Because a lot of the time, I think that we get very wrapped up in, creating reports, looking at information, being part of, different events that maybe we go to, but are they actually adding the value to your business? So I think that's the first step that people can do. I think the second thing is to go and have a look at your core metrics. So I'm talking about conversion rate, I'm talking about customer lifetime value, I'm talking about average order value, and really kind of thinking about things like bounce rate. Now, if you look at those and say, right, what are the things that are really struggling at the moment in terms of our growth as a business, focus on one of those things at a time. Because ultimately, if you're trying to improve your AOV, you're trying to reduce your conversion rate, you're trying to reduce your bounce rate, it's going to be very costly to do all those things in one go. And the other thing is, you've got to think about how interconnected all those pieces of data are. If you're going to increase your conversion rate, then it's also likely you'll be able to start increasing your AOV as well. And equally, if you reduce your bounce rate, you're also then going to be able to increase your conversion rate. So just to kind of, I guess, distill that, it's finding out the things that you can get rid of in your schedule, and then focusing on the one metric that you need to focus on that's going to help your growth the most.
Mm-hmm. Great. Yeah. I mean, that sounds like a great approach. For a lot of merchants, are very interested in how they can improve their conversion rate. What is something that a merchant can do today to, have some instant impact on their conversion rate on their site?
Speed, speed, speed. I'll say it until I'm blue in the face. The number one thing that we do with our clients when we come on with them is that we look at the speed of their sites. And a lot of the time, the biggest impact on speed tends to be around image optimization. Now, there are a lot of websites out there where you can actually get your images optimized. If you're working with an agency, that's something they can do for you. Freelancers can do it. You can do it yourself. But that is always the number one thing that is going to have an impact on your conversion rate. Now, you'll hear different stories about, look, you've got 3 seconds effectively in terms of load time to be able to get someone engaged in your store. And I think the reality is that as time progresses, that number, that research number, is slowly coming down. I think the latest research I've seen was about 2.4 seconds. So if your store isn't loading in that kind of time frame, that's the kind of thing you need to look at. And by far the easiest thing to do is your images. The second thing to look at is go and look at the apps that you're using. Now, with a lot of apps, we tend to find 2 things. One is that some clients will come to us and they may be using 10, 15, 20 different apps. And ultimately, with every app that you install on your store, you're going to have obviously some code associated with that, which is going to then have a weight to it, which is then going to affect your speed. So go and do an audit of your apps. Which are the ones that you're actually using? Which of the ones are actually, can you directly know that are generating you revenue or are going to help you get revenue? And then the ones that aren't, remove those. Now, you have to be very careful with that removal because sometimes you can leave zombie code on there, which still will, effectively kind of slow down your store. So it's definitely worthwhile, kind of getting someone in to have a look at those, making sure you've uninstalled them properly, and just basically making sure the weight of that site in terms of the code is as optimal as it can be. And those 2 things you can do straight away after you've finished watching this.
Right. Speaking of apps, in your business, what apps do you find kind of come up time and time again that you find that you're recommending for your clients' needs?
Yeah, I mean, for us, like I said, the thing with Shopify is that I think there are a lot of choices. At the moment, we're kind of, I think, on about 2,000 apps in the App Store. But the thing that we did is probably about 2.5 years ago is that we boiled it down to really kind of working with 7 or 8 core apps. And one of which, of course, is Rewind, because we find that is just an absolute no-brainer for any Shopify merchant. But in terms of, the kind of the more, I guess, sort of day-to-day apps that you would be using, more directly, Klaviyo is definitely a one that we talk about a lot. And when we talk about Klaviyo, we talk about our approach to marketing, which is called the Klaviyo nucleus approach. And really what that means is that if you set Klaviyo as the brain of your marketing, there are a lot of integrations that you can do with things like recharge subscription payments, with your loyalty program with Loyalty Line, with your reviews from reviews.io. And what you can do with that is that you can then stop thinking about each of your apps as separate, as in their own silos. So a good example of this is that, if you're thinking about a loyalty program, when a lot of people think about loyalty programs, they really think about it by itself. So someone signs up to a loyalty program, they get points when they spend, we communicate with them through that loyalty program, and we rely on that particular customer going back to it to find out what points they've got to then spend. Now, the reality is, look, we're all very busy, and you can't rely on your customer to say, right, when I next go to that store, I'm going to log in, I'm going to get my points, I'm going to use them. What you need to be doing is using kind of integrations, for example, like with Klaviyo. So a really simple integration you can do is set the integration between Klaviyo and Loyalty Line, which will then give you the ability to put a field in all of your emails which says, "Hi Adam, your points balance is 1,000, for example." That can then link through to the site, and then you can start using those points straight away. And it's little things like that where, yes, the app itself gives you value, but the important thing that we've found is that if you allow those apps to work together more, then actually the more value you're going to get out of everything. So the overall pitch here is that, go and do a review of the apps that you've got at the moment, look at which ones you can integrate. And you can do that very easily by going to, the Klaviyo page or whatever app it is, and just typing in integrations. It will tell you what's there and say, look, what are the things here where I could be sharing information, sharing data between the different apps that I use? not only to give your customers a better experience, but also to help you convert more as well.
Mm-hmm. Those are great suggestions. One thing, like I know that you mentioned that, one of the apps that's kind of a no-brainer for your clients to install is Rewind. And that just kind of makes me think, I know that, there's many important things for e-commerce merchants to think about. And of course, cybersecurity is one of them, given that their business relies on their website being, up and running and accepting orders. And I know that Blends is an e-commerce agency that takes cybersecurity seriously, like both internally and also when advising your clients. Could you tell us more about how Blend helps protect their clients' store data?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, I think the thing is, that as a Shopify merchant, when you decide to work with an agency or a freelancer or even people within your own team, you're placing a lot of trust in them because you are then giving them access to a really significant business asset. And when it comes to thinking about Rewind, the point that I often make with Rewind is that a lot of people, when they start with the store, they think about things like domain names, which of course is very important, but I kind of see Rewind as important as thinking about what domain name you're using. It's one of those core blocks that you've got. And what we do is that when we work with a merchant, we do a number of things around security. The first thing is that we always strongly recommend that they use Rewind. And the reason for this is twofold. One is that it gives them the peace of mind that if anything were to happen that we were to happen to do, then they could obviously get that information back. But secondly, of course, if there was any malicious attacks, even down to the fact that, look, if a common thing is, look, people accidentally will delete product catalogs. That is an absolute nightmare if you do that. So Rewind has got you covered on that perspective. So it's not just security that Rewind helps with. It also actually helps you make sure that you have that peace of mind that you need if those kind of mishaps happen. The other thing that we do is that we also set up two-factor authentication. So that's really important, again, when you're working with an agency, that you set that up, because that just means that you can be sure that when you've got people working on your Shopify store, you've got the right people working on it. And the third thing is that, when we are working with the merchant, what we will ordinarily do is request collaborator access. And I'm sure many of you know listening that if you have worked with agents before, you would have been asked for collaborator access. Now, the key thing is that we only need to get access to information that we really need. So we're very careful about what information we ask for. But secondly, when a project or when a relationship comes to an end, we will make a point of saying to that customer, look, you now need to go and remove us from access from your store. And these are just some basic things. Like, look, if you are working, with a store where you have lots of different people accessing it, these are 3 very simple steps you can set up. And the key thing is here is that you might think, well, can I be bothered to do that? Is it really necessary? The point is, when something goes wrong, you're really going to wish this happens. And it's kind of why, I think about these things. They're a little bit like insurance policies. I'm sure, me included, look, I insure my phone, I insure my dog, I insure my home, I insure my wife's engagement ring. Now, all of these things have, a tangible value to them. They also have an emotive value. But if you think about your business, your Shopify store has been a core part of that business. Just reflect on the emotive value associated with that and think about the tangible monetary value of that. That, I'm sure, is a big, big part of your life. So if you put these simple steps in, you've got that insurance policy. Should and hopefully you'll never need it. But of course it does happen. So for me, that's why it's so important when you take these kind of measures that we're taking at Blend to make sure you're protected in case that thing does happen.
Yeah, absolutely. And is that kind of how you explain Rewind to your clients when you're talking to them initially about it?
Yeah, definitely. I think if I reflect back to a few months back, Farrah, I put a post up on LinkedIn about unsexy apps, and I listed Rewind as my top unsexy app. And I think the point is, look, when it comes to apps, we're always kind of looking for that new thing, that kind of that shiny object. But sometimes what you need to do is sit back and say, right, what are the things that are part, I guess, the core fundamental building blocks of what we do? And when I talk to our merchants about Rewind, I always use that example of the insurance policy because, look, from my point of view as an agency, we want to make sure that our clients feel secure in working with us. Now, all people will know that agencies, do get referral fees from people like Rewind and all that kind of stuff. And there's been a lot of people talking about it at the moment. But the point is for us is that what we would get from a company like Rewind in terms of referral fee is actually very, very minimal. But what we do have is that if we can make sure that our clients have Rewind installed, we've then got that peace of mind as an agency that if we do have any mishaps, that we can go back and resolve it. Clients have that. And if that's in place, that relationship then becomes stronger, because it just means that everyone is under that understanding that, look, there is actually that kind of safe belt there just in case something goes wrong. And that's the way that I like to think about it. So it's a simple step, it's a simple thing to install, it's low cost, and for me it's just a no-brainer is the best way to describe it. It's just a no-brainer. So if you haven't got it, damn well get on the App Store and download it. I don't want to sound like a plug, but for me it's just simple. Just go and download it.
Yeah. I know, like, from your experience, like, working with a variety of different clients, I was wondering, like, what kinds of data loss experiences have you heard of merchants experiencing with their Shopify stores?
So the main thing really has been, I guess, twofold. One is always about products. Now, what tends to happen is that, sometimes you will have Shopify merchants who bring on maybe junior employees who are uploading products, removing products, adding different products, making changes to products. And sometimes, there's two things here. One is that there could just be, some mass errors that are completed. Equally, if anyone has ever dealt with CSV files, you'll know that they're problematic. And if you're not completing a CSV file in the correct format, you're going to start creating some issues on your Shopify store. And I think for me, that's always been one of the most powerful things with using Rewind, is that you've got that peace of mind that if that happens, you can quickly back out the changes and get back to where you were. So I think that is by far the most common thing that is going to happen perhaps on a more frequent basis. I think the other thing too is that sometimes is that when people have worked with freelancers and agencies, inevitably sometimes things can go wrong. Sometimes it can be that actually you've had order data deleted, you've had for example pages deleted, and you can't get those back because you haven't got records of them. And these are things can be human error. It can at times be malicious. I would say look, the malicious side is something that we don't see a lot of, thank goodness. But I know there is at the moment a lot of phishing and cybersecurity issues going on as the Shopify platform gets bigger. So I think there's a few different areas here that if you're sitting there thinking, look, well, that wouldn't happen to me, just have a think of that for a second, because what I'm saying is that my experience is that these human error type things in terms of data loss, malicious things, they can happen to small stores, they can happen to huge stores. And if you think about, look, if your site working the way it is at the moment is generating X amount of revenue a week, what about daily? What does that do daily for you? What about if one day your Shopify store went down and it wasn't working in the way that you've got it now with the data that you've got? How would that affect you in terms of your ability to pay your staff, to pay your bills, and to achieve those financial goals that you wanted when you started out as a business owner? So I'd say, guys, reflect on that for a moment and think about whether you need to think more, I guess, clearly about your security of your store.
Definitely. Another thing that you mentioned a bit earlier on is you mentioned about like referral bonuses. And so for those of you who might not be aware, Rewind has a partner program for e-commerce agencies, and Blend Commerce is one of our partners. So I wanted to ask you, Adam, I'm just curious to know, like, why did you decide to join the Rewind Agency Partner Program, and how has it benefited your business?
Yeah, I mean, the main reason really is that, we wanted our clients to see that we were saying, look, Rewind is something you need to have. And I think if we're not part of that partnership, we don't have a strong partnership together where, our potential customers see that we work with you, then what does that kind of say about our relationship? So I think that was, ultimately very important. I think the other thing too is that, because security is something that doesn't get thought about as a kind of first thing, we're also obsessed with marketing. We're also obsessed with getting our project page right. All these things is that if we can put that actually and say, look, when we go out to a merchant, these are the core apps that we recommend that you use, and Rewind is in there. It shows people again that that is an important thing to do. And again, if we weren't part of your partnership program, I think again it just shows that, are we actually committed to that particular cause? Is what we're saying real? So I think it's also kind of a level of accountability for us, because if we don't, come together and, do great things like we're recording now, it just kind of makes it seem like, well, are they really in this for the right reasons? And, I think the great thing about being part of your partnership program is that, look, you give us a heck of a lot of support, and, we've done a lot of, things together already where we've, featured on each of these blogs, and we've been able to kind of spread that message and give that verification to potential customers that we've got, that actually Rewind is a great solution to have. And secondly, that Blend is a serious agency when it comes to taking on your security matters.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And, it's been such a pleasure working with your team through the partner program. So we really appreciate that partnership that we have.
Nice. Thank you, Farrah.
Great. So, for other e-commerce agencies who would be watching this, what advice would you give to an e-commerce agency that is perhaps just getting started, kind of early stages of their business?
Yeah, I think the thing is, look, when we start as an agency, and like with a lot of the merchants that we work with, the biggest thing that we have to establish is that trust. Because when you are going to be dealing with an entrepreneur, it's likely that their Shopify store is probably going to be like a baby, like a child to them. It's going to be one of the most significant assets. And if you can show to your potential customers as an agency that you care about that asset and you want to protect it, then actually that is, I think, a really great starting place. And I think, if you are an agency that is recent and that started fairly recently, and you haven't perhaps got a lot of different case studies, showing that you've got that partnership with Rewind is actually a really good move, because it is that trust indicator that, look, these guys are serious about what they're doing, and they do actually want to help and make sure they're doing the best by their clients. So I think from that angle, it's a really good move to do that, because again, you guys can also provide agencies like us with a lot of information about the importance of security and some data, that we wouldn't necessarily privy to. But also, you've got a very simple solution to say, look, when a client starts working with you, the first thing we're going to do is give you Rewind to make sure that you're protected, not only from mishaps by yourself, but also to give you again that peace of mind that if we as an agency are working with you, you've got something then that is essentially going to back up all of your hard work and protect the asset that you've got.
Absolutely. Great. Yeah, thanks for kind of sharing all that, your perspective on that. And I think that's useful advice for new agencies getting started. I guess just kind of as we're kind of heading towards the end of our session, could you tell us, like, for people that are interested in learning more about Blend Commerce, how can they find you? Where can they follow you?
Fantastic. I absolutely love connecting with people on LinkedIn. So you can find me Adam Pearce, which is Pearce. If you want to have a look at our on-demand digital department, if you just go to blendcommerce.com, you can kind of have a look on there in terms of what we offer, how we kind of came up with the idea. And there's lots of great videos and blog content there, not only about Shopify, but also about our team and just really kind of how we interact within the Shopify community.
And you also have that podcast as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So please, guys, do tune in. It's called Shopify Across the Pond. We are on, I think, now episode 51. We've had a lot of great people on the podcast, ranging from Brandon Fishkin to the CEOs of some of the leading Shopify brands, as well as obviously great people like Mike Potter from Rewind. So there's a lot of different people on there from different walks of life, from different aspects of the Shopify ecosystem. Go and check out iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts from. Shopify Across the Pond.
Great. Yeah, we just actually just earlier this week, our CEO Mike, he recorded an episode with Adam that's called "How Can You Protect Your Shopify Store?" And in that, he shares tips for how merchants can protect, costly downtime and data loss, and kind of dives deeper into a little bit of what Adam and I have been chatting about today. So I'd encourage you to check that out on Shopify Across the Pond. Great. Well, I just want to thank you so much, Adam, for joining me today and for sharing your advice for e-commerce merchants and for agencies. And I just also want to thank everyone who's watching. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to give it a thumbs up below and to follow Rewind's YouTube channel for more videos like this. See you next time.